How do you learn who you really are? It's not found in books. It's found on the battlefield. What's up, warriors? Welcome back to the battlefield of the mind. I'm Rick, and today I am here with Chris, and we're going to talk about some adventures, but some of you guys may not know who he is. So, Chris, let everybody know who you are real quick, and then let's get into some very cool conversations.
Wonderful. Thank you. Excited to be here. My name is Chris Gritti. I'm a mindfulness coach, though I use the term very loosely. I'm not one that likes to have the vibe of any kind of ambulance chasing lawyer. And monetizing empathy and mindfulness can be very paradoxical. So I like to make as much content as I can. I like to share as much information as I can. But for the most part, I mean, I have had clients, but I'm not really actively coaching very many people because the few that I have spend some time and then they're good. And you know what I mean? And I have all these wonderful amicable goodbyes, but I also don't believe that I need to have repeat customers. Like if you're good, and they hit me up every once in a while, I've probably got about 40 or 50 people that, will text me. But it's like once a month and, it's something that bothers them. And usually it's at that point, it's just like, I feel you, because there's not always going to be some sort of solution or answer. Sometimes validation is just really what people need to know they're not crazy. And, it's not hard to give that as long as you've established a comfortable relationship. So I'm a big fan of doing even this kind of thing. I would do more podcasts and you name it, but I'm a broke artist and I am, I am what I am. So I got a website that's still got its duct tape and super glue holding it up for a couple of more weeks. But that's who I am. I got a bunch of followers on TikTok, but what does that even mean? Really? So
people know you. You're kind of a big deal.
Yeah, sure.
No, I think it's really cool. I actually want to jump into something that I think that you and I can team up on right now. The term validating somebody or validating somebody's emotions, I think, has been bastardized today because people are using meme therapy instead of understanding. Can you help me when I say, you're saying like, no, sometimes these people just need to feel heard and validated. Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
When we experience, let's say, an unpleasant scenario, when something unexpected happens, we experience loss. It could be on a grand scale or a microscopic scale, but it irritates us. There's the old-fashioned way of saying, suck it up, man up, walk it up, bootstraps, all that jazz. But when we talk about validation, it's to not counter, to not stand in any form of opposition to what's being presented, to just receive and understand. And that's the step that most of us want taken first before we get you're going to have to suck it up or you're going to have to get through this or whatever it is. We need to sit with it and process our emotions. And as I'm sure you know, our emotions don't work on a time clock. Like no matter how impatient we are, when you're angry, you can't just shut it off. In fact, I've found it's really unhealthy to. But if you can say, like, if I called you up and I'm like, I'm angry, and you'd be like, yeah, I'd be angry too. And then you just sit there with me. You know what I mean? Like you're not countering it. You're acknowledging it. You're not even telling me to calm down. That is when you become a supportive energy, right? You're standing alongside someone, not against them. And that's really what I believe fundamentally it means to validate someone. There's a lot of places you can go after that, and there's not everybody that understands how to receive it very well. Sometimes people are angry and they want way more than validation, and they don't even know it because they're in that fight or flight, desperation, drowning kind of space energy-wise. But to me, that's what validation really is, learning to not be in opposition to what someone's presenting to you.
Gotcha. So I got a question here because you said to not counter them, don't oppose them, receive them, understand where they're coming from. What is the difference then between like your definition for validation and acknowledgement?
I mean, we're splitting hairs,
Well,
there's,
I think it's
but
important because this has become weaponized, and so I want to make sure
you're
it's
right.
used correctly. The
You're
hairs
right.
seem to
Semantics.
the semantics seem to destroy marriages, so I want to make
Dude,
sure that
yeah.
we're using this right.
Devil's in the details, right? Like
Correct.
that's where that phrase comes from. It's all the little things that'll make all the cracks that make it fall apart. But yeah, acknowledgement versus validation, or what's the difference? I guess I would say validation is one step past acknowledgement, right?
Right.
I can acknowledge that you're angry and not give a shit. That's not validating.
So you add empathy
Yeah.
to validation. Now
There
this
you
is where it gets curious, is
acknowledgement
because
and empathy equal validation.
now this is where I think the hairs get necessary to examine. Is because like, well, if I'm going to offer empathy and you said I'm really upset, and I'm like, well, I was upset one time too. Is that empathy?
No, it's acknowledging. That's the hard part. Okay. But that's a counter. See, that's why it can't be considered validation, because you're countering. When I share something with you, I'm not asking you to share something with me. That's a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Unless we're going to actually say, hey, like you and I are doing here now in a podcast form, let's have a conversation. If I need to vent to you, if I need to express or share something to you, if I need support, that support comes in the form of you receiving what my stress is by listening and then holding it as well. Now, if you're going to explain to me that you've gone through something similar, all that does is acknowledge how I'm feeling, but you're still not carrying it. You're just telling me a story that's from, like, you're adding yours now to it. So now I'm carrying yours and you're carrying mine, but I didn't show up to carry yours. And if I'm in a bad state and I need to be helped, asking me to carry yours at the same time, we're not going anywhere. Like, that's the way it always is. Mm-hmm. It becomes, you know what I mean? It's like, sometimes it has to be about me, and sometimes it has to be about you. And sometimes it's going to, and like more often than not, it's going to be about both of us. But in those times of real leaning on each other for support, the one who's doing the supporting has to get out of the way needs wise. And that's a hard thing to do. It really is, depending especially on if you're dating someone, and I've been in this myself, who is always leaning. And they don't like to let go of that leaning energy. So it's like you always have to be there sort of eating or absorbing, it's the sin eater kind of position. And that's not healthy. Like, it's got to be balanced. And it's balanced because you're not feeling an imbalance that's causing you to feel like there's an issue. Like, there's balance if there's no issues.
Yeah. It's tricky about this is, even if the answers are correct, the solutions are difficult to understand. And so, like, you're saying correct words, but it doesn't mean I know how to do it. Mm-hmm. And that's where you're like, well, it needs to be balanced. I'm like, well, we could probably have a 2-hour conversation on what does it mean to be balanced, and like, well, we need to add empathy. And you're like, cool. Well, does that mean like, hey, I felt that way too? It's like, no. And this is where it gets interesting when I watch empathy, when people will use this sentence. We're like, oh, you're hurting right now? Well, what about me? And we call that empathy.
No, yeah, that's equivalent to, and this will sound harsh, that's equivalent to, I don't give a fuck.
Correctamundo. Yet is the most common response that I see in our comment section.
Having a bad day? Let me tell you about my bad day.
Yeah, but what about my day? Or I'll see a dad who's like, this dad is having a hard time. And the first thing in the comment is, well, what about moms? You go like, well, you really don't give a shit, do you? This guy's struggling. You're like, yeah, well, what about her? You're like, oh, well, I guess we don't worry about his struggles.
This is the whataboutism, right? It's the false dichotomy. It's the creating the this or that scenario. If we're this is the same thing with empathy and sitting. And if I'm, as the guy, going to sit and listen to the woman, and she's going to, my partner, and she's going to express all these things, I'm not doing what about me's. That's support. So if we're talking, like, even in a YouTube comment or a TikTok thing or whatever about we're supporting a guy, we're not nullifying the struggle of the other side. We're simply focusing on one, right? So the guy is struggling, we're focusing on him. We could have a whole other conversation about her, but having to sit down and talk about him doesn't nullify her. And that's that weird, like, cognitive dissonance of a false dichotomy that isn't real, right? It's the same thing if we're going to bash politically on one political person and then somebody goes, what about the other person? It's like, that is another conversation. We're not always talking about both.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be able to fraction down things so that we can analyze them. We can't always be looking at the whole picture all the time. Now, we do need to look at the whole picture sometimes, and that's what real balance comes into. It needs to be all of these things. So men need to be considered. Women need to be considered. We could even bring that to each partner needs to be considered. What is balance? That's going to be the diversity of humanity, and we're all different. You just know it's balanced because you feel the balance. Yeah. Like you're on the same team would be the best way that I could describe a state of balance, where you genuinely, no matter how much you're fighting, no matter how much anything that's coming out of you, you're not worried that it's over, and they're not worried that it's over. Then you're somewhere in the balance, even if you're swinging around.
Yeah. So we got an interesting stack of things here now, because now we want to feel heard and validated. I also know in order to be validating instead of just acknowledging, I have to add empathy, which, in the words of Eeyore, don't get me started. And then when it gets into I think empathy is saying that I also had stuff I went through too. And that, like you said, makes it about you and diminishes anything for them. And so this whole concept of balance to try to become a team is going to be really, really difficult to do when it's riddled with what about me instead of what empathy, acknowledgement, or validation really is. And so it gets complicated here because all I wanted you to do is just hear me.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Warrior, thank you so much for being a part of the information that we have. And you're part of our story as we are a part of yours. It's very much an honor to be able to connect with each other. If you want to know more or you want to get started with working with me or working with our warriors so that you can begin your path to authenticity, strength, leadership, and accountability, this is the way. Together, we are way stronger. Now you get to choose. Do you go forward or keep doing what you've always done? If you stay where you're at, hey, click on some of the stuff and follow what it is. We got motivational stuff. We've got podcasts. We've got more things. Just subscribe and do the stuff, and we'll keep you updated. But if you want to start going in, start jumping into what our programs offer and start your journey and being the hero in your own story.
To add to that, because I understand, obviously, because I've been guilty per se of that kind of response myself. I don't think anybody is guilt-free on that one. Like, we all have done it at a younger age, ideally, but some people never learn better. The point is, when you share something with me, a personal thing that was traumatic, let's say, and I've had a shared experience or a similar experience, to empathize with you, you don't need to know about my personal experience. My personal experience is the fuel or the venue that allows me to step into a closer approximation of how you're feeling and understand. If I was to genuinely be empathizing in that moment, that means I know what this feels like. So the next step thought-wise is, what did I need that I didn't get when I was in that scenario? I don't need to explain that I went through this so they can feel bad for me too. Maybe I can be the thing that never showed up for me. And the reason I know what to be is because I have experience. But all of that stuff is internal, doesn't need to be expressed, right? So you share all that stuff. I have a shared experience. I think about that and I say, do you feel this way now? To see if you went through like that, then, or how does because I've been through similar and I felt this way. You don't need the details. You don't need to I don't need to hand you my freaking stress. I just need to give you enough. That's the key. It's like oversharing when you're listening is, basically not listening.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've had a similar experience, you can say, I don't want to get into details, but so how that affected me was this. You don't need to, again, remember, if you're being there for someone else, it's about them. And anything you are presenting is meant to be of assistance to that, not to shift the energy or the focus to you. And it can be very hard for insecure people to do that.
Ooh,
And I'm not saying
shots fired.
but I'm not throwing shade with insecurity. Like, I suffer from it too, even before we had this thing. I think it's annoying when we get to these ideas where we have to sort of present this front of strength. No, bravery is doing things while afraid. Yeah. Not nullifying fear. So anxiety is a part of your reality. So people who have higher anxiety, it's not to be shamed or guilted on. It's about acknowledging it. I have it too. Doesn't mean it needs to be debilitating. And it certainly doesn't entitle you to special treatment. That's the problem.
Oh man, you're shooting bombs out here on people right now.
Oh, I mean, I could go on for.
Yeah, so the insecurity thing is pretty heavy. The unmet needs, very, very important. But then also that anxiety doesn't give you special treatment. Dang, man.
Your emotions are yours, right? Now, if you and I are friends and I express to you that I'm feeling strong sadness, that doesn't obligate you to do anything, right? You're my friend. So you're not here out of obligation to begin with. I'm sharing it with you. You make a choice. You could not care. You could do a lot of things. So when we share our emotions, this idea that anyone else is obligated to do anything about it is an entitlement that's born out of desperation, frustration, anger, trauma. I've been there too. People should care. Ooh, is that a sticky wicket?
That should.
Because I wish everyone did care, but we're animals. There is no should when it comes to how people are going to, like, you could project as much as you want about objective morality. I wish everyone did care, but it doesn't mean there's a should. Should means that there's some sort of objective reality truth, and there's going to be some police to show up to make that should happen. And I don't see that happening. So there is no real should. And, people are shoulding each other all over the place. And they've done it so badly, we should ourselves, right? We got big piles of should that are stinking up our freaking consciousness.
There's shit all over their relationship. Their whole house is full of should.
Boom.
Yeah, I'm with you.
If I respond to something with a certain emotion and somebody says, you should be ashamed, but I don't feel shame.
Should I?
It's like, exactly. Or not. That's a fun little anecdote that connects to something we were talking about before we actually went on the live. I was in Japan and I was spending 3 months, very long story, maybe another time, but we were getting all crazy partying on the weekends and people were all messed up and people were projecting all kinds of these wonderful pontifications about philosophy. And the guy the husband and wife whose farm I was staying on and working on, the wife was sitting there. She's so quiet, wonderful woman. And they said all this stuff, and one of them looked over and said, "Hey, Ange, da, 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 da." And I remember thinking the same energy we were just thinking of the should. And she, like a boss, just went, or not. Like, and that was it. She didn't. And I remember just sitting there and my mind was blown because I had felt that push. I saw the move. You know what I mean? It's like it's all game, right? It's all this dominance play of power and whatever projection. But she just took it and like lobbed it back like a tennis, like, or not. And I was like, I need to remember that. And I've kept that with me. That was 2020. You know what I mean? It's that or not is more powerful. It's it is what it is thing.
Is what it is also a dangerous game, though. It's not the same. But I'll help you with that one. But I really do enjoy the less is more in a conversation. The over-explainers get themselves in trouble trying to make sure everybody's okay, but not allowing it to even have a question. And so it gets tricky with the people who are like, here's how it should go, and why don't you do this? And it should be this way. And if you don't do that, you're not good. And you watch out for blame and shame and judgment. And we watch out for here's how it should be, and you're not good if you don't. And I enjoy the idea of somebody saying, or not, or no. No is a complete sentence.
Yeah.
It reminds me of I'm going to warrior talk with you, but being able to take this lesson, I think it was King Philip III or something. I want to say it's Alexander the Great's dad. The story goes that they were going to invade Laconia, which is the Spartans. And he said, if I invade your country, I'm going to, wipe you off the map, and I'm going to erase your history, and I'm going to take all your women and children. If I do this, you guys are screwed. And the Spartans responded back with just if. And King Philip is like, these guys are a waste of time. Let's screw these guys. Let's go around. These guys, what a waste
Right.
of time these guys are. One word answer instead of having to give a big long explanation of how that won't happen. Just going like, yeah, if you do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if come on. And
Right.
so it's those kinds of things where sometimes less is more. And when people are trying to control others, they're seeking judgment to, have compliance. And I think that you're too much this, too much that, and I want to control you so that way I am an authority for what I want everything to be like, which I think is very strong for you to say. It's a good indicator that you're not very secure with yourself because you're trying to control everyone else for you not needing to do any self-work.
Right, because it's such an easy thing to understand. It's a very hard thing to climb out of after being, but the concept of like your insecurity leads you to believe because you're not secure, it means out of control, not safe. The security's not there. So you're desperately trying to find a way to dominate a bubble of control to solve your insecurity. What you're failing to realize is that ultimate control doesn't lead to security. It leads to isolation.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And
well, it makes so you don't ever have to do the introspection to heal, in which case you're trying to create your own enablement.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to make it so you all make sure you change you so I don't ever have to heal.
Right.
And so then everybody who does change themselves ends up going, fine, I'll sacrifice that for me. And fine, I won't have friends. And then fine, I'll shut up. And then fine, I'll just do whatever you say. And that person's still never healed. And so then they're still angry or upset or sad or fearful. And you're going like, how are you not okay? I sacrificed all of me.
Right.
So you'll be all right. And they're like, yeah, well, you didn't do enough. It's like, maybe it wasn't me.
This is toxic codependency.
You are not wrong. And so when people are doing this, I want to give people the right armor against this one. It is very okay to hold the line and say no or not, or even if, on people who say, I want you to change or you should change. And the core reason behind it comes from a wound from the past, a fear of something from the future, an insecurity they haven't healed from, or a judgment to try to control you to make you feel bad enough to do whatever they say. So that's going to be like the fears, the insecurities, the wounds, and the judgments. If you see this present, if you sacrifice a part of yourself to make them happy, you will never make them happy.
Right, because they're under the delusion that your sacrifice will, and it won't, because this insecurity is something that's an internal thing. We can support each other, but I can't put security into your heart to make you feel comfortable with who you are. I can simply reinforce the reality that you can find that place within yourself. It's our own personal journey, every single one of us. That's what I mean about how it's about learning to stand aside next to each other and acknowledge we're all suffering instead of trying to group up and hierarchy levels of who's suffering more and therefore more important gets priority. That's selfishness and misunderstanding that. How are you measuring that?
Well, I measure it by what about me?
Right.
And I'm always
so
right.
do I. So we've all got our
right.
individual measurements. No wonder it's not, it's not like Apple's, it's even worse than the charging cord issue. Like that's why conversation is an art form. Right? It's a skill. It's not a default. Speaking on the idea of you were pointing all those things out, the other thing I was realizing, like a simple no as an answer, you're never obligated to answer any question. Ever. You might have to feel the social pressure of 1, 200 million people stare you down while you say no, but you can still hard stop. That's the illusion people don't really understand. It's like, if you just posed me a question that I thought was whatever, I might go, no, I'm not going to answer that. You know what I mean? And you go, why? And I go, I'm not going to answer why. Please move on. We're still cool. You know what I mean? That was private. Whatever it is, I'm not saying there's a perfect way, but the point really is that like, we don't have to divulge. We don't have to open up.
I agree.
We choose to.
I agree with the choice element of this. I don't disagree with that, but then I also try to understand the purpose for like some of the way that that would be postured. Because again, the answer and the solution may not line up. And so if you say, I don't have to answer that because Chris said so, and you're like, well, hold on a second, babe. I really do need to know what you need here. I don't have to answer that. So no. And you start turning into the reason that you were trying to maybe protect yourself, or maybe make it so you don't divulge another person's secret, like maybe whatever it would be as a protection system, which is a big reason why people lie, is to protect either themselves or others from consequence. So most people are lying not for Machiavellian reasons, but for protection.
Right.
So
They could simplify it by saying, I'm forbidden from like I can't answer that. I've made promises, or
well, I not even
you
can't,
know,
but I won't. Like
there you go.
I
You're
choose
right.
to protect another person's thing. If you want to know that answer about them, ask them.
Most
No.
can'ts are actually won'ts. I acknowledge that. I got to catch myself too. There's very few actual can'ts. Like I can't fly, I can't hold my breath underwater for an hour, but I won't is usually what we mean. I won't do that because someone's feelings will get hurt. I won't do that because my secret will get revealed. I won't do that because my life will come crashing down. Whatever it might be, it's still a won't, not a can't. You're right. Good call and catching me on that one.
Hey, teamwork.
Yeah.
And so I like these things where we're watching people, not catching that there's a choice and that our reactions are somehow not in our wheelhouse. Like somehow I'm not responsible or accountable for the decisions that I make because I was emotional today and it doesn't count. And so I can tell you something that is just monstrous, but then I can just say didn't mean it and it's fine. So I can say like, we may have been brothers for years, but I've never ever loved you, dude. So I hate you. And then go, oh, that's just some shit I said when I was in a bad mood. And you go, no, I invested a lot of life into you, man. And you said you never loved me back. Like, I don't know what I'm investing in right now, man.
I hear you. Because those are the ones where it's, and I've had guy friendships and romantic relationships with women where I've had that same kind of thing where it's just your brain sort of breaks trying to rationale how this is a balanced situation, and it just isn't. It just isn't.
No, well, it's hard to bounce back because there's certain things people will say that you can't say sorry for.
Right. There's lines. That's what a boundary really is. And I found that shocking. I've had that even with like my present girlfriend, and I feel like I still have a problem of building a bridge of communication with that, because when she gets heated, the things that will come out of her mouth are just brutal. You know what I mean? And whenever I've met anyone who gets to that point, now she's a therapist. So this is where
you want to hear something funny, Chris? Most therapists don't like me.
Yeah, they don't like me either because I challenge a lot of the stuff they learned in academia, especially the language barrier, the gatekeeping that comes into the diagnoses conversations. Like I've read the DSM too, whoop de flip and do.
Yeah,
like,
and most of that's bullshit too if you challenge it. Yeah,
right. And I've had her stop me from. This was just personal anecdotal. Like I made a whole series on toxic traits, predominantly aimed at trying to shine a little bit more highlight on what NPD versus narcissistic behavior, all that jazz really is, because there's another word that just, but it's like it's still a valid term. There is still a correct use for it, and you can't mess that part up. And I'll use it, and she'll go, "Don't use that." And my brain wants to just rage. It's like, are you trying to tell me that you're with me after seeing me do all that stuff, and that you don't believe I get to even be any form of an authority on this because you went like, whoa, like, so are you telling me you're invalidating all of my content that I put my heart into? And this is what I mean? Because you don't just to counter it in private. You know what I mean? And because that's really me. I'm not projecting I'm not there for me. I'm not making my videos so that Chris gets attention. I'm making these videos because this stuff needs to be talked about.
I see your intention.
I digress.
No, your intention is good, but it's curious that you said the way that you are responded to when you're having your good intention is don't use that. Don't say that. Is that a request or is that a demand?
It's more of
don't say that, Chris.
Shame. It's more of a demand. It's a demand.
I'm demanding what you should do.
Or demeaning my cognitive ability. Like I'm already that you're like, I mean, it's worse than just that.
Well, I don't know how much I would add without asking, but I do
It's
know if I tell
evaluating.
you, but if I do tell you what you can and can't do, I'm at least making a demand. Now,
Yeah.
my intention you may create, but if you ask, like, why'd you tell me what I can and can't do? And then go like, well, because I think you don't know what you're talking about, and I don't think you should do this. And they're like, oh, now we're in the shoulds and what you believe. Okay, what else do you see when you see me?
The
And
problem
I'm
is once you get into the weeds with that kind of situation, especially when you're dealing with these folks,
is it
trying
weeds
to
or
walk.
is it weeds or truth?
I call it the weeds because, as far as I can tell, the people who are, let's say, blind to themselves or unwilling to be self-aware to the degree that it involves humble pie,
Sure.
because that's, you need to develop a taste for it. But the people who aren't or haven't developed a taste for it, as soon as you get into what I'm calling the weeds, they start acting like a drowning victim. And you have to start sort of talking to them like they're an angry wild animal, very calm and soothing. And you need to keep, and it becomes this thing where you're sort of holding your mountainous whatever against the rage of their storm. And this isn't just with women. I'm talking about anybody who's in this. I've seen it. And it's like, you're getting nowhere. You just have to stand there, and minutes, hours of your life could be drained away. And I've failed to make progress in those things. So
I
maybe you can.
haven't I haven't seen that work yet. I think I see people say weather the storm, but it's kind of like saying like if I'm abusive, you should just
Put up with it.
let me punch you till I'm tired.
Right.
I don't agree with that. I don't think
I don't
that's a
either.
healthy way. I think a healthy boundary is different than you have to be stoic in the face of somebody whose intention is to do harm. And this
Mm.
is where I think people goof up boundaries and non-negotiables. There are certain things where I don't really have to have a big debate about. It's if you do certain things, that's just not a match for me. And I'm not mad at you or sad at you for it. I'll still grieve the relationship, but if you believe that some sort of domineering, controlling system that is designed to make sure I am compliant based on your inability to be able to handle situations is the best way for us to grow, I will just say, or not, because that's not going to work for what I believe is best for a growing, healthy relationship. And so if I say, well, when I'm angry, I can attack you as much as I want to, and that's okay. Well, now I have to choose. Is this a boundary that I can even, try to have any kind of leeway to? Like, well, all right, maybe a little or up to this point, but maybe we should have a safe word where we time out. Or I can have a boundary that says, once you start talking to me in this way, I'll give you one chance to slow down and hit your brakes. And if you don't hit those brakes, I'm walking out the conversation. I'm just gonna walk outside. I'm gonna go walk it off. That's what I'm gonna go do. I'm gonna go walk it off because I don't have to stay here and weather your storm because your storm is not meant to bring water and grow. Your storm is meant to destroy.
Yeah, I've had that scenario too. Fortunately, not with my current girlfriend. You know what I mean? And I don't like to demonize her too much. It sounds like I'm trash talking her. These are in the worst moments. We'll see, is the best I like to say with that. I don't try to pretend like I'm certain, but I'm not willing to bail on it or to move on
Now
yet.
this is interesting because I have a question for you in these dynamics because as a person who does self work, we
Mm.
have to be aware that we're doing it. Like
Mm-hmm.
if I'm in the middle of going, you fuck you, you motherfucker, and I'm just bombing on you, like I have to be aware that I am doing that.
You're actively doing it,
Like,
mindfully doing it. Right.
yeah, I didn't accidentally call you a name. I deliberately am doing this. And there's a reason for it. That's an attack system to try to force control because I'm going to be more aggressive to make sure that you, A, hear me, and B, I don't need to hear you. And so,
Mm.
like, I'm going to make sure I control this whole situation. But then you also see people who will go into suppress or flight or get the hell out of there, or people who will use freeze and they'll be like, I just shut down. I don't even listen anymore, or they negotiate and they try to be people pleasing in a way that they have to control the conversation. And I have to over explain and I have to make sure whatever you need, I'll do for you. And people are going into all these systems of control without ever doing the beginning of what you said, which is being present and listen to them. And this is a really interesting thing that your girl even has a system that goes against what you both know works. And
I know.
that's where there should be the agreement of going, babe, when you do the thing that we both know doesn't work, I'm walking out. Now I'm leaving you. but I'm going to let you cool the hell off. So I'm going to give you 5 to 10 minutes to go, damn it, I was doing the thing. And if you don't know you're doing the thing, what are you an expert at again? And maybe I don't need to take advice on things you don't know how to do.
Mm.
Let's go ahead and get into truth here. Because if I'm telling you how to build something, but I don't even know how to use a hammer, that's probably not going to be the best teacher. Hey, Chris, join my millionaire class. I only make $30K a year, but you can join my millionaire class and I'll teach you how to be a millionaire. It's like, you don't know how to make $1 million. You can't teach me that.
It drives me up a wall. The level of certainty people project about answers to problems.
Agreed.
The monetarily and emotionally, I mean, it's across the board. Tony Robbins and all these people who are, it's like, it's true. You could go to one of these weekends and spend all of this money and have this experience fueled by a lot of manipulation, a lot. Whether, and that part always makes me go, because you're using a buttload of tools, all of them, music, high energy, a bunch of people, crowds, exposure, vulnerability, and even
on some of these, I'd have to know which ones are manipulation, because change your state is actually just useful by yourself.
Right. But I would want you to actively know why we're doing it, not doing it without your knowledge. So
I did see Tony Robbins. He actually does explain this is how we change your state. When the music comes on, we're doing it for a purpose. Everybody do something crazy and weird because it changes your mindset. So he did explain it. So I am openly asking, like, well, which part is the manipulation? Because I don't know.
The manipulation is that the feeling that high charged moment induces is replicatable outside of it, right? Like, it requires all of those people and that massive thing. Like, there's a reason when we all join together, we have these experiences, right? Collective attention and perspective and sharing things. So that's the powerful thing, doing that. When we leave, we have to have a little pocket knife version of that.
Sure.
And I think he does a good job of explaining all of that. But what he fails to do is acknowledge, be careful how much you attach to my energy, even right now. But he wants them to. He becomes sort of a crutch. And I think that's sort of it. I'm not blaming him, because I'm not saying I know a better way, right? It's his tool and it works to a degree. But so many people climb onto that codependently to like that. And then it's like they need to see YouTube videos of him or whatever to recharge it. And it's like, that's not being independent or teaching you self-resilience. You're just shifting your dependency to something else.
You may be onto something, but I don't know if it's complete, because you're not wrong that even our videos and other people's videos, we teach information, but not transformation. And so we'll say, be aware that these are there, or here's a tool that you can put in your toolbox. It doesn't make you an expert at using it, but at least now that tool is there.
Yep,
and so, I've seen Tony Robbins once, so I didn't have a crutch where like I need him or I can't be happy. So I didn't have that, but I did understand the tools that he was giving me in my toolbox required me to do practice. And so I did practice outside of Tony Robbins to say, how do I use this? And I have no fear of failure. So it's okay for me to go like, well, not backwards. That didn't work. Let me try it this way. So it's okay to practice. And I think that's where people get more into the crutches. They'll try it one way and go, that didn't work. I need to go see Tony again. And you go like, no, just try a different way.
Right.
And so I think this is where, there's the pocket knife thing is just trained or untrained, but maybe having a tool isn't the same.
Maybe the part and to be fair, mislabeling as manipulation per se is just going to a Tony Robbins event is like going to a concert.
Agreed.
And there's something wrong with that, but there's also something right with it. Yeah. If I can make sense about that, it's like, it's okay for it to be, but it's also like he needs to sort of highlight that it isn't as well, right? This is an extreme moment.
I want to know why.
Because people can get addicted to going to festivals and music. They get addicted to an entertaining aspect of it. And if you start thinking that's how mental health works, I just go to a party, it's just another version of the big swings. So it's like,
you may be right. I haven't encountered very many of these people though. The ones who have to go to they're addicted to going to an event. I know that I believe they're out there. It's just not in my circle, I guess. And
Well,
so like, I'm
I've
not saying
caused
people,
many fans.
no, I'm by no means am I saying, because I've done no research on that element, not saying you're wrong. I just haven't seen or experienced it in person.
Mhm.
And so there could be something to that. And I don't know if a disclaimer at a concert to go like, guys, we're about to jam for you and you're going to love it, but it's not the same energy as when you're at home listening to this on your headphones. So enjoy the energy, but understand this is for entertainment and it's not like this at home. I don't know if the concert needs to do that disclaimer any more than Tony Robbins goes, you do know that this isn't the same as the video you watched before you got here, right? It's the
Right.
show. And so I don't know if a disclaimer is needed as much as people to take a little bit of introspection and go, how do I use these tools instead of I need a codependency to going to events? And that's part of maybe one of the events will be, you do know that these are just the tools.
Yeah.
Stop coming here to expect transformation. And this is maybe where I can agree with you.
Yeah, that's, you get what I'm pointing at, because I'm
Some of
not
the events,
it.
they call it transformation weekend, but it's
Right.
too big to give that person the time to do their work individually because there's
Right.
thousands of people there and they try to space it up in groups and they try to break it down into smaller groups, but it's still you to you. And maybe there's something there.
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
have that experience, but you could be onto something for certain personality types.
I guess for me, it's just, it felt going to, because I've done like Psy, you're familiar with Psy, and then a few other ones, all similar to this. And it's this opiate that I can sort of feel being pumped in. And, watching the people I'm interacting with, because my goal often isn't to be cynical, though I often am.
That's fair.
But that's not my goal, right? Like I'm not Diogenes over here trying to totally, I'm not homeless. Like I'm not. So what I'm really trying to do is see things clearly and not be drawn into something unwittingly. So when someone comes up to me and they're very, very energetic and excited,
Yeah.
I get suspicious almost immediately because it's like, you're pushing a little too much. If you believe in this, you could dial it down. You don't need to actually push it at me. And there's a lot of that push it at me energy at those types of things, not usually coming from the leader, but from the people working within the thing to kind of like, and that gives like a cult vibe and a bunch of other stuff. And people get sucked into that. And I see that energy there. And I think that's really what I'm trying to highlight, that there needs to be something there to be mindful of that. Because there's some people who are just extra.
Well,
and I think,
or have the armor to recognize the difference between a sales pitch and authenticity. Because that's, if you're not wrong, there are certain things, especially in the speaking world. I've gone into just watching other people's events and it's so over the top disingenuous and so fake that it's really difficult to find connection. I end up just also leaving those groups because they're like, hi guys, isn't everything amazing? What an amazing, awesome amazingness. And an amazingness is going to be so amazing today. So get your amazing books ready because we're going to write some amazing things. And I'm like, is everything seriously amazing? Like,
right.
it's like that everything
mail times, like Blue's Clues level, kind of like you're trying to treat us like a kindergarten class, get us hyped up because we are all having problems with our attention. We're all grown adults. Treat us as such. And it's the same thing when you go out to dinner. There's so much of it in our society across the board, trying to make everyone have this like the same experience. All restaurants want to hyper control. So here's your script you have to say as a waiter or waitress so you can upsell, as opposed to put having a good experience as the main point for your customers, right? If you're going out to eat, you want your server, you want their number one priority to be your experience, not how much tips they're going to get, not how much they're going to, the business is going to sell. You don't go out to eat to care about that shit. And when I can see that that's what you care about, suddenly I am like, the experience is shot for me, because the whole point of going out is to be served without any of that weird manipulation and guilt. You know what I mean? If you're going to invite me over to your house, you don't do any of that. Right? Going out to dinner is meant to be another version of that. When you're over here, you're at our house, you're part of our family. But that's very rarely the experience. We just sort of all get on board and play along with it. And it's much more closer to make believe or cosplay than it is genuine.
That's true. And maybe it's not supposed to be completely genuine. And maybe there's a part of us that's being a little judgmental about people trying to run a business. So
Also true. Yep.
yeah, so I mean, like
Yep.
we may be doing the same thing. It's just on the other end of going, well, I don't like it, so do it my
Yeah.
way. Here's what you should do.
Well, that's why I don't say the should. I just don't like.
You
Did I say
should be not
should?
worrying about the money. You should be not worried about, you should be looking at my experience. You should be trying to. So, like, I don't know if we're getting in the same boat. I don't
I
know.
guess I've done Bart, like as a guy who was trying to be an actor at the beginning of my youth, you know, and I really, that first big job, yeah. Glad I didn't. Glad I didn't. I sort of did, but I'm glad I didn't. Um, and then I ended up being a host and a server and a busboy and a bar back and a bartender and an assistant manager, that kind of jazz. And having done so many of those, yeah, I feel authoritative enough to say that I know how to provide a good experience.
Mhm.
I know that when I did those things, I did receive high tips or very what I felt was genuine gratitude, and that they seemed to be happy and that they came back. I think all the things that the company wanted me to do ended up happening, but I did not conform to those things because I refused to be fake. So the counter there is, can those people do that and be genuine with a script? Maybe. Do they care? Maybe. Do they have to care? That's again, that's projection. So you're right. I'm just explaining that from my experience, the best experiences I've had both on both sides involve the authenticity of, it felt like somebody was happy to do their job, not like in some unrealistic extra way, but some people were naturally extra. You know what I mean? It's not about the extra. I'm talking about whether it felt like they were comfortable and we were comfortable. And there's a lot that goes into that. So I'm not trying to crap on all of it. It's just, anyway, I digress.
You got a thing. There's a thing there.
Yeah, I can't land every plane. It's ADHD. What can I say?
Nah, you're good. So on these ones, it's kind of fun when we get in these conversations because you're like, it's not meant to be, but it's almost like, you know what grinds my gears, man? Servers, like
Right.
Tony
Right.
Robbins events, you're like, I gotcha.
I guess for me, it's fake it till you make it isn't fake it, fake it, fake it, make it.
Mhm.
Fake it till you make it is be confident, have faith in yourself, even though you don't really feel that confidence yet, that you get through learning. Be as confident and have faith in yourself and practice, 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 and grow, grow, grow. And so the fake it is like here, and it's supposed to be dissolving as you progress towards making it. These days, a lot of people are just doing the fake, fake, fake. And because they're projecting it, and a lot of people are enough to be suckers for it because they're not and then these people think they make it. So they're bypassing the actual learning to be adept at crap.
Yeah,
And
it's actually using denial as acceptance. It's a curse, and you're not wrong because being fake to make it does make it so if you do make it, it's because you're fake, and that means you never have to be authentic. It does create a curse. It also makes it so you don't know how to grieve, you don't know how to accept, you don't know how to have truthful conversations, and your authenticity will always be non-existent because if you are authentic, then you won't be what you're faking to be. And that'll expose you, thus leading you into an emotional crumble because you don't know how to grieve, understand thyself, don't know how to do anything. Like you've just become a persona. And here's an interesting thought about that. If you are being a persona, and these are the things where you talk about the characters that we play or the makeup that we wear or the energy that we change for when we're being like in those conversations, if you start being something different, whose life are you really living? If I'm being a character with you and I'm playing like, well, hello, Chris, welcome to the show. Wow, wow, wow. And I start being a character the whole entire time. Well, how many minutes am I not being myself? And if you're living your whole life pretending to be something that you're not, whose life are you living then? Because at some point there's a crack in the mask and people start going like, wait a second, who are you? And you go, I don't know.
right.
I've been playing a character for 20 years. I don't know who I am. And I don't think that you guys would like me if you did.
See, the hard part I think, and hopefully I'm not tangenting off from here, but the hard part is, I think because we're apes, there's that insecurity born from lack of safety. And each individual human being has the capacity for all of the things humans can do. And we pretend like that's not true, right? Like we're all dangerous, right? Like this idea, I would never harm blah, 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 these I nevers. It's like, nah, if I tweak your scenario enough, that's what those weird horror movies are meant to sort of point out to you. Mess with you enough, get you trapped in an isolated, controlled environment enough, and your perspective, your behavior, your mindset, your faith moves around. So that's this weird limiting thing we try to do to other people so that I can put you into a box, label you Rick. I understand Rick, and Rick is this type of guy with a beard, and guys with beards, and white guys, and like all of these things, all the labels. I think I got you. That's the illusion. I'm trying to do that so that I'm not afraid of what you might do, or so that I'm ready, trying to prevent any potential danger. And that's fine, but it's not real, right? It's me trying to oversimplify something and then pretend I understand it. We need to be able to open back up. Life is a lot more like jazz. It's like parkour. You don't get to have things in a box. You don't get to do that. No human being fits in one. So I meet you, you and I start to develop a relationship. If you're consistent with your words and your behavior over time, we develop trust in those things. I can start to feel like I could depend on you to remain that kind of consistent the longer it goes. But the illusion there is, if something tragic happens to you, I have to be willing to step back and go, now they might change, and allow that change. You know what I mean? Or help guide. It's a sticky wicket. But the idea, like, they think the problem a lot of the times is we're trying too hard to force everyone else to fit into these little boxes so that we can feel safe, as opposed to understanding we're all, like, it's a little more dangerous, but you just have to sort of, you're dangerous too, right? I always like to tell my guy clients, be a good guy, but keep your teeth sharp. Mm-hmm. Right? That doesn't mean that, like, those two things coupled together make sense to almost every guy, right? Like, it's okay to be a dick sometimes. Just don't be a bag of dicks and you'll be okay. And you do know the difference. Like, it just locks in, like, oh yeah, I get that. Like, that's what it is, right? So this idea that, like, oh, I would never, it's like, no, I might, but don't test me. Why would you? Why are we playing this game? Why are you even creating this hypothetical scenario? That kind of thing.
Yeah, there's very good questions there. Like, why are we doing it this way? And why are you testing? And I think it's a really dangerous thing for people to not recognize that there is coming a point where there's a push for, like, we're all capable, so we all should. And your should comes back in again. We're all capable, so we all should. And then you're doing that thing, like you said, projecting a limiting belief onto others, so that way I can control their potential of what they're able or allowed to do. But it's still I hate to be super gender specific, but I guess maybe more the female energy. I can't say females, but the female energy is going to bully this direction more. The male energy is a lot more physical and going to be more physically confrontational, but the female energy will be more reputation, demolition, or destructive of who that person is.
Right, passive aggressive.
Well, in order to win, but not compete. It's better for you to take yourself out of the game, so that way I'm the best, than it is for me to get better to beat you. And that's a different energy for this. Like, I'm going to give you a limiting projection. You're allowed to be this, and if you're not, what tools will I use to make sure you comply to what I believe your limits should be? Well, now I'm going to judge the shit out of you. Judge. So that way you are compliant, and I will tell you what you're allowed to be. So that way I can win and be in control, but I can still get whatever I want. Right. I still want to have whatever I want.
It's the pursuit of control that highlights the bad to me.
Yeah.
Is really,
it's all control. Everything's control. We're all, that's what you're watching. That's why the correct armor makes it so, like, remember, insecurities, fears, wounds, judgments. It's just control. And this
Mhm.
is where, even in our programs, just the know thyself element makes it so create a boundary that makes sense. Do you want to hear a fun statistic that I've done hundreds of times? Is whenever I do values assessment, like let's go through your values, your top, two values. So I have a whole values list and I say pick 10 of your top values, break it down to 5, break it down to 2. I think Brene Brown does the same thing. So like, let's break down your top 2 values. And then what I do is I challenge, how do you process things? How do you operate? What is your motivation for doing those things? And I see, do these 2 values line up with the way you operate? And I have never one person, I've done this with authors, coaches, PhDs, bosses, you name it. Not one person has ever got their top 2 values correct, because they'll be like, my top values are faith and family. And then you realize all their decision process is all based around service or growth or community or something. It has nothing to do with family or faith. In fact, it's just what I wish it would be, not what I really do. And so people are trying to create boundaries or protection mechanisms against other people's control systems, but they don't know what they're protecting. And that makes it really difficult to hold a healthy boundary when I don't know which things I need to hold them for.
Right. Because you don't know where to put the wall.
Or
Right.
when to walk away. And so people are trying to weather the storm when you should just go back inside.
Right.
And so it's one of those things where we're trying to figure out, how do I live within this limiting projection that you've given me, instead of simply saying, or not.
Well, the hardest part I have found when it comes to like romantic relationships is the misunderstanding of how the joining really works, right? You don't become one, you're still two, you're two whole combined, right? When 2 atoms join, they don't become one, they become a pair. You're like, so you become a pair. Now you could consider that pair one thing, but then that's like, that's the next level. Just keeping to the understanding that we're both complete. You don't complete me, you add on and I add on. So we're in this together. I like to think of like my mental landscape, my world could be like a county with a big river that runs around it, like, however you want to look at that. And my girlfriend's is the next county, right? And maybe these counties move around like molecules and whatever, and when you bound up with people, you start to build a bridge so that they stick together and they maneuver together. Everything is that connection between you. You're still 2 wholes. So the connection is the bridge, and it requires maintenance from both sides. It requires negotiation. It requires validation and all the things that go into becoming and joining, onto a team, right? Like we need to both be here. I don't suddenly become all and you are in my world, and you don't suddenly do that either. We could create one together, but we still are ourselves within it. This over need to blend, I think, has a lot to do with insecurity, because they're afraid of being alone. And there's a big difference between being alone and being lonely.
Yeah.
Right? Monks go for flipping years and they're not torturing themselves. So it's not about being alone. It's about not knowing how to deal with loneliness, which is a human emotion we all deal with because we're social mammals. So
True.
when you're alone and you're feeling lonely, that's not something that's to be shamed for, but it's also like, it's not weird or wrong or odd or even necessarily to be fixed per se. Like, feel the loneliness and see if bringing somebody else in who doesn't want to show up is a very selfish way to solve that loneliness. If you're thinking that bringing someone else in is the answer, you're using someone else. We're not meant to use each other. We're meant to help each other. So if I'm a tool of yours, something's wrong, right? We're not balanced because we're users, not tools. And that's really what it is. We need to be able to treat each other like users. We're all users,
I think people are taking that too literally, and they're just using people. We're messing it up. The semantics.
Yeah. I know. I get so philosophical, and I know some people take everything so literal.
You're doing perfect. All right. So in this one, I agree with you. I think there's things I've noticed the patterns on that same thing is you go like, it's going to be me and you, and you see people competing. Like, I'm better. No, you're better. No, I'm the good one. You're the bad one. You see the competing, but then you see your codependency ones. As we say, you complete me. You complete me. And it's like, well, I never have to actually be whole because I'm relying on you to fill in my voids. And that obviously doesn't work because you never heal and you're getting mad at them for not curing things they weren't there for. So that's a codependency. Doesn't work. And I'm with you. It's the 100-100. We complement each other.
And
Together, we're
if
better.
we have issues, personal issues, trauma, whatever, they're still our responsibility to personally work on. The only responsibility of our partner is to be there for us, not to heal us, not to counsel us, not to fix us, right? But to support us.
Let's talk about this. This is a huge mistake out there where people will judge men into what they should do when men are trying to become a safe place. It's really screwed up right now. And so this is really difficult to do. Instead of it's very, because what you just said is like your wounds from your past are now an us thing. But again, Rick, you just said, don't change yourself for someone's wounds. Correct. What I mean is I'll create a space where you're safe enough to heal, but I do not heal you. I just make it so you're able to not have to fight everything while you're healing. This is what it means. So I do not take your damage on as my own. That does not work, but I can make it so I can take things off your plate so you can focus on healing. Now, if you choose not to do introspection, which is one of women's greatest curses I've run into, which is gaslighting their introspection and saying, I can call somebody else's shit out, no problem. But I don't call it the same thing when I do it. That's one of the biggest issues I've run into is like when it comes to the guys being able to be a safe place, well, the emotional element is the hardest challenge. But when it comes for women to be able to receive safety or be safe for their man, the truth or reality element is the hardest obstacle because the reality is not as beneficial to them. And so they need to control reality in order to be okay, which goes back into the masks that we wear to be loved, approved of, and chosen. And guys are like, well, what do I need to be or do in order for you to be okay? And they think ladies know, but they're trying to appease the mask and not being authentic enough to give a true need. Again, nobody knows their values, and don't get me started on knowing their needs. They don't.
Well, I'll give you an example of like from a parenting perspective, right? To create a safe space, like, a couple of examples. Say you're a parent and your teenage child is at a party. And in the past, you've told that child, if something ever happens, if there's ever an emergency and you're in trouble and you have no one else to call, I don't want you to, you call me, right? You want to be that person for your kids. So you drill it into their heads. Now, when they do call, when this does happen, how do you handle it? Right now, if I would say, and this is my opinion, I don't like to always say that there's a right or wrong. In my opinion, creating a safe space means you do exactly what you said you were going to do. You go pick them up, you bring them back, you get them out of danger, and you get them back to safety. And whatever parenting or talking about it, things need to happen, that waits. Right? You show up, you create the safe space so they know that what they did makes sense. Then you have the talk. You don't show up to pick them up and blow up or show up and shame them or do anything that adds to it. You save them. And saving them doesn't involve educating them along the way back. That's my side. Whereas a lot of parents would go and show up and they would mean well and they'd say a joke, passive aggressive, whatever it is, all these types of little stupid things and make it worse.
Yeah.
And what that ends up happening is showing the kid, I thought I could have faith in you to show up and not do any of that, but instead you showed up and did that. So I'm going to try to find another solution next time.
Yeah.
That's what that is. So it wasn't a safe space.
Right.
If it's safe, they know it's safe. Even if you scold them afterwards or you're having that conversation, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but you got to be careful about how you do it. Otherwise, you burn the bridge. Same reason why a kid doesn't talk to their parents about sex, because their parents don't know how to receive the reality that their children are eventually become sexual beings. Like, get over it. And you don't get to choose when. And all this disappointment about how you want your kids to grow and how you want you. You don't give birth to a child to own them and then dictate the course of their life. You give birth to a child to guide them to figure out who the hell they are and hopefully teach them enough so they have become a happy, healthy, fulfilled member of society. But whatever choices they make aren't for you to have opinions about. They really aren't. You can, or at least not project.
Yeah, you
Like,
can still have an opinion, but yeah.
all right. Like, is my approval of my son something he needs to be worried about?
Yes,
Why?
because being proud of your kid matters.
Worried.
Yeah, this is where we have to be selective. Does the approval matter to my kid? Yeah, it does. It
Well, my
does. It
point
does
is
matter.
withholding that approval
It's still, yeah, you're right.
is is the
You're making a good point. So I'm gonna stack with you on this one. You're making a good point. And so I have three teenage girls, and let me just tell you, fucking up's an art form. They got it down. They get it. And so we have to love them through the crazy that they do. And we've had them do pretty high level crazy. Like this matters crazy. You know,
yeah.
it's not like you messed the kitchen up. It's like this one's gonna leave a scar. And so we've had those ones that are there. It's become a cool thing as I'm a stepdad, so I have three teenage daughters. I didn't make them, but I raise them.
Mm,
And with this job, it's really made it so my role becomes clear because their dad and mom freak out way more than me. And so whenever they have their shit come out, I'm the one who's like, hey, calm down. We did way worse. Just listen to them. Like, you're going to tell me you didn't drink when you're just, it's fine. Let them, they're safe. And so they know that if they call me, I'm going to be like, I'm really proud that you called me. Like, I'm fucking fucked up. I'm like, but I'm going to get you home safe. I'm glad that you called me when you were fucked up. Good choices. I'm proud of you. And I can have that moment that they won't remember, but they'll feel it. And and so
that stays right.
and
There's
that's
the
the piece that'll be there. And I think this is the part where you're seeing again the control systems where people want to tell people they're good or bad, right or wrong with judgments. So that way they become more compliant. But you're not remembering that we have to fail to grow. We have to mess up. And people are getting so big on results and not measuring effort. Like, did you try? I'm proud of you for that. Because failing is now just a part of getting better instead of since you didn't get an A, you're grounded. Like this is where kids get screwed up because there really is only one good way, and it's not easy to be
right.
perfect.
It's impossible to be. In fact, it's one of my 7 daily freaking affirmations. It's choose progress over perfection. Perfection is a direction, not a destination.
Yeah. I got a
It's
balance one
never a
for you,
place you
Chris.
reach.
I got a
Yeah.
balance one for you. One that I this is an enlightenment that I came to last year, and it's really served me in just the maddening times that we've had. When I accepted in mind, body, heart, and soul, all elements of myself that I control nothing, it put me in control of everything. This is going to be something that people will get this key, but have no idea what door it's for.
Right.
Like this is when I realized I don't control anything. I only control the way that I respond or, handle the situation. That's all I have. And
Yeah.
so I'll sit here and go, yeah, your oldest daughter, she was out drinking last night. Instead of going, well, that's not okay. I'm pissed off and she should never, and blah, blah, blah. I'm getting in all this stuff. I'll be like, yeah, well, that happened. She was definitely drinking last night. That already happened. I can be as mad as I want about it, but it's already happened. So I don't control that, but I can control like how safe was she? And I
Mhm.
can love her through. Like, were you the one there to hold your hair? That's an uncomfortable night.
Right.
Like you can be there and go like, did you learn how to do this safely? Did you put yourself in dangerous scenarios or were you aware of your surroundings still? And trying to train our humans to be good at it instead of feeling ashamed or scared or guilty because you didn't do what I think you should when they already did it. I don't control what happened. It already did happen. But I can come to the processing and realization of what already happened. So I can still grieve, like, oh, I should have, could have, would have done the bargaining phase. And I'm really angry they didn't do it this way, but they already did it. And I'm kind of bummed out about it, but I'll be okay. Let's accept what is. So that way I can appropriately choose how to be there for my people and love them through the fucked up shit that they have to do to become an adult.
Yeah, we don't. This molding thing is just the wrong perspective, in my opinion. We're guides along the path, saying that's dangerous. You know what I mean? But it's there's so subtle nuances of like, don't go do that dangerous thing because you will get harmed, blah, blah, blah. But there's that other side of, again, the insecurity that comes out in parents where it's, don't do that. How would I feel?
That'll
It's
make me look
happening.
bad. If you touch that and burn yourself, it'll make me
Right.
look bad.
That's the bad side of this that I think people can get caught up in because they're too worried about the optics or Machiavellianly looking like they're a good parent, right?
I have to control you too.
Right.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, so this is where the letting go of control, which is a high level skill, by the way, because we understand the belief systems that we have to have like happen to us. The first one, most common one, is it happened to me. We all know that one. And then the one that goes to the one that everyone talks about in every meme, it didn't happen to you, it happened for you. That's the growth phase.
Oh, I hate that too.
Well, it's important, though. It's an important phase to go through. So people use it as meme therapy, but don't actually understand how to use it. But once you practice this, it's pretty valuable. But then the next level up is actually more difficult than it sounds, which is that balance thing that I just said, where in mind, body, heart, and soul, I can have full acceptance of what is. And that means the things just happened. And I don't have to have a reaction to it. I can have an acceptance of what is, so that way I can then go to the final phase of, now that I accept what is, I can now use this to work through me. So now I can help others based on what I've overcome through radical acceptance of what is. And now I can help you get there too. These are belief systems that we have to train to do. And most people really struggle with the first one, that it all happened to me. I'm the victim, poor me. What about me? Me. Until they realize that happened for you.
Well, that's the only reason I countered it, because I don't disagree with what you're saying. I understand that sort of progression and the scaffolding being built there for the wash, rinse, repeat cycle of sort of getting your mindset off of that it happened to me thing. For me, it's more of I went through that, and the place I reached, which I sometimes feel is like a really weird, odd, lonely place. But then I also wonder if like that's 100 bajillion people have all said that, it's that kind of, are you really special? Yeah, maybe not, whatever. But the point is, I don't think anything happens to me or for me. I think it's more like we're in a giant breathing, pumping organism that's, you know what I mean? That's all happening in real time. And I am one consciousness within it. And I do control myself, this little bubble of my emotion. Like I don't control, but I'm the one generating my emotions and my thoughts. And so it's for me to run the landscape of reality based on knowing that and being ready to, like, there isn't going to be things I'm always ready for, and there's going to be new things. And I choose whether this thing is happening for me or to me. Just like you're saying, I get to shift those things. And because I can shift them, they're both not exactly right. It's just me trying to tweak it so that I can understand in this conceptual way. But it's really more like life is parkour, and you are only in control of you. There isn't a going back. There's a learning how to progress forward. And you can progress forward with all your experiences. They can be heavy baggage or they can be light. They can be scars that stay open, or you can allow them to close. You're not obligated to do any of it. You get to choose. You can keep them open. You can defend the reason that you have your trauma and why you are. No one can control that. You're right. It's yours. Stay that way. But the problem, of course, the paradox becomes we're all saying, I don't like it. I don't want to be this. It's like, that's where the rub is. The biggest problem is that you've convinced yourself you have a problem. And you don't. You're just more fresh, or you haven't gone in a direction, or you haven't tried, or you haven't moved in a new, it's not, you're not, nobody's broken. You know what I mean? I think the closest thing that I can analogize to it is that we do build mind mazes, like that castle in your mind. We all build mazes, and some are rooms where we go to hide. And sometimes those mazes get so complicated that we feel like we get lost in our minds and we don't know how to get out. But the truth is, we're still the generator of said maze. So the only one who really knows the way out is us. That's what a good therapist or coach can do, or even journaling for yourself, right? You don't necessarily, it's you exploring and having faith. That's the key thing, having faith in yourself to believe you can find your way through all of that stuff. And maybe you don't even want to find your way out. Maybe you make it comfortable and you stop being amazed and it turns whatever. Like, you can play with your imagination and that metaphor any way you want. The idea here is you're not busted. You're just before, It's all it is. If you're still breathing, you're still in the game. That's it. You know, you have all of these tools. You could be monstrous or kind. You can be generous or selfish. And no one can force you otherwise. We can manipulate each other. But this idea that you made me do something, no, even if you put a gun to my head, and I know this is harsh because people don't like to think about death and they get all weird. I remember seeing something you're talking about suicide, and I totally get what you're saying. Like it becomes a very rational, logical thing. Like everything sucks. Nothing really matters. People don't give a fuck. And I'm, as a guy, like if I'm going to say, what about me? Then suddenly I'm selfish every fucking time I do that. So I'm just supposed to eat it and be the mountain. Like, you know what? I'm out.
Yeah.
Like if that's the rules, then I'm done. And I don't think people quite understand that when they project that be a man crap at us, especially when women do it. No offense, ladies, but
No,
here's a
offended. Be offended, ladies.
Here's the reality. How would any woman on this planet feel if I said, be a woman, and tried to explain to you what a woman is from my perspective? Out of your mouth, I guarantee I'd either be lit on fire. They're all going to tell me, you have any clue what it's like to be a woman.
Chris, you'd be judged. You'd be judged and judged and judged and judged because that's the control system to beat a man.
And there is the double standard that doesn't work, right? So the bottom line here is I can imagine, empathize, do my best to try to understand how my female companions, loved ones, family members are feeling. I do not know what it is to be a woman or how to be a proper woman. Anything I am going to state is how I wish women to behave from my perspective. I don't know what it's like to go through the hormones. I don't know what it's like to get all the pressure or all the passive aggressive bullying that happens between women as they grow up. I'm not trying to diminish that. It's a freaking monstrous thing they go through. But it doesn't mean that entitlement is born out of it. And that's where the rub really comes from. You know, just like the walk it off crap doesn't entitle us to be dicks.
That's a good point.
It just doesn't.
No, and it's true. And this is a lot of the game that you're seeing right now really is revolved around judgments. It really is. This is how you beat men. This is why men are beat. Is like if you don't do what I say, you're a piece of shit. You're a misogynist. You're a bigot. You're a racist. You're a whatever.
You're mansplaining.
You're mansplaining. They just make up a judgment that's designed to shame a person into compliance. And the thing is there's what women don't seem to grasp is that the design of men is to be a natural giver, and the design of a woman is to be a natural receiver. That's why we're designed the way we are. And whenever I've done any
like
studies,
Legos.
Yeah, right. There's a thing. Men are wired to give, and we have a goodness towards women. We do. It's built in to protect a woman. It's built in to care about her feelings. It's built in. We do have that.
Not meant to be dominant. No.
Right. Well, I mean, like we're meant to be strong, but it's not meant to be like a negative
strength and dominance. You get what I mean? Like we don't need to be in control of everything.
There's a difference between power and force. You know,
Bingo.
There's a difference. And so I'm with you on this one, but this is like women can't physically toe-to-toe men. We're just upper body much too strong, and we're faster. Like we can't mess with us. So you have
and they
to
learned that a long time ago.
Right. But then you say, but we want to make this game equal. But it's not about we both have the same challenge. Let's beat it. It's, well, if you're faster and stronger, you should be cut down or have to carry weights or do something to slow you down so that way it's equal. And you're like, wait a second.
I agree with you, and I'm only cutting you off because it binged in my head, and I apologize. But the problem I think with it is still thinking of it as a game, right? That there's some sort of competition here of better or having more value. Why not a dance?
But before you go to the dance, you just said better or more value. And that's where I think women are goofing up right now, is they're saying, measure my value, not love me for who I am. Well, and the problem is then we'll go, fine, what's your value? And then they go, well, that's not fair.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you go, but you just said, treat you equal, measure what you bring to the table. Well, what do you bring to the table? And it's like, well, I am the table. And it's like, that's not bringing anything. Like, I should just be getting what you have. And that's because you get me. It's like, well, but you said you wanted me to measure your value and not love you for who you are.
You're describing self-objectification.
Correct. And that's why
I'm an object. I'm an object of value in and of myself. I need not do anything else. I show up, and that's what brings to the table. I'm not saying we haven't gaslit them over centuries to believe this, and we've created it like on a mass scale, society across the board. But that's the delusion. No, you don't, because none of us do. You have to also be kind. You have to also do things. You have to just showing up. We like your value. You know what I mean?
Oh, I
The
know
only
what you
value you would
mean.
have is the only value you could have inherently is if I can move you around and use you. When you just show up and stand there, that's
But
nothing.
well, that's the problem too, is because this is where there is a issue that's going on. I'm going to lean this into a solution, not because I think we've had this problem conversation 1,000 times.
You're
I'm going to
probably
lead
right.
into a solution. Um, you and I have both done enough work in psychedelics to say we should really be able to explore the therapy element of this,
Oh,
not
absolutely.
just the recreation, but I actually do deep. I know that it's not legal at the moment, but I do deep psychological work with psilocybin and MDMA. And I've been studying the shit out of this, and it works. And if you want to have a relationship, like the real conversation, I have never seen a stronger heart side psychedelic than MDMA.
Yeah.
If you sit with your person and you go, let's do this, you will have conversations you've never been able to have before.
Mm.
You'll be able you're all of a sudden your girl's irrationality becomes highly compassionate and listen to understand. I want to hear something funny. Is the last 3 lives on Wednesday we
Mm.
were on MDMA because we wanted to show what's the effect. And you see, between my girl and I, there is so much love, and you can
Mhm.
feel the energy there. And people are
Mhm.
like, you guys are relationship goals. I'm like, you guys should try getting out of your way. If you use this as a tool and not a crutch, you'll connect in a way you've never done before.
That
And
involves humble pie, right? That's the
you should
hard
be
part, I
you
think.
should be getting a full plate.
You know, I understand. I've said this too. Humble pie can be bitter at first. It's not always fun to sort of be to real. You know, it's owning a mistake. I was wrong, right? That's that feeling. But once you develop a taste for it, the way that your day to day sort of bio stability, you know, like your homeostatic kind of situation is much more frequent and calm. And so it's just about, oh gosh, it's amazing how you're right. It's about getting out of the way almost all of the time, right? Our anxiety, our ego, it's not about you, right? And if you feel like you want attention, that's fine. But this idea that just because you want, you deserve, and if you don't get what you want, then you throw a tantrum of some kind, even if it's small to big, that's the mistake, right? Just because I want doesn't mean I deserve. Every time I have a want, I might be disappointed. I created the want. My disappointment was like, you've got to understand and own a portion of every single thing, you know, like every bit of the trauma I went through and every relationship I went through, I was a little bit complicit because I was continuing to show up. This concept of false dichotomous entire blame on either side is just wrong.
It's nonsense. It doesn't work either. I think we should call it, instead of humble pie, we should call it humble vegetables.
Okay.
Well, because like we know eating our vegetables is good for us,
Oh, I
but
see
they
what you
don't always taste the greatest. I don't always love it. And so you're like, eat your vegetables. You're like, I don't want to eat the vegetables, but it's really good for you.
mean. Mhm. I don't disagree. I don't disagree. I
You
think I
know,
just liked saying with such verb, like you need some humble pie in
you
your
need
effing pie
pie.
hole.
In your pie hole.
So that's just the mindset for me there. Plus, you know, I like the concept of like, it's another thing that makes me think about like people say it all the time, but don't think about it. Like, have you ever tasted humble pie? And whatever's going on in your brain right now, have you ever thought that way? Like, you ever
That's
even
awareness.
gone any deeper into the concept? Because when you do, you start to discover a little bit more nuance about a lot of those things, right? The concept of forever promises, for example.
Mm.
Like, hey, Rick, have you ever experienced forever?
Not yet, but I'm looking forward to it.
Sure, sure. So if you have not yet experienced it, how do you know it's something worth aiming at? How do you know it's good? Like, where's your proof that forever is a good thing?
And
And
now we're
yet we
getting into
promise forever
faith.
about it, right? I don't
Well,
like that.
you're
Absolutely, man.
well, it's such a fun game on this one, and you're making very good points. And I like to try to put solutions in, not just the information. The part of the thing you're talking about, have you promised for forever? the idea behind it starts going into heart side and spirit side. This is where people try to force love. This is like, I want that, give it to me. And you talked about that thing, and I'll get back to that in a second. But being able to say, like, I want to make a commitment or a promise to you, and it's intended to be forever. Well, how do I know what forever is? How do I know if that's going to last? How do I know if we're not going to grow apart? How do I know? Well, I don't. And this is why the controls on the mind and body versus the heart and spirit side are different. They're backwards. On mind and body, surrender is quitting, failing. You lose. You're done. You're no good. But on heart and spirit, surrender is going way stronger, because I don't force love. I let go and I fall in love. Well, what are you falling into? I don't know.
I don't think love could be forced. I think if you believe that it's even capable, whatever it is you're experiencing is not love. Love is not obligatory, right? It's always an offering. It's not a taking. I can't take love from you. I can only receive it from you. And if it's genuinely love, then it's coming out of you lovingly and genuinely. So it's an offering. It's a gift. And any gift giving with obligation isn't a gift. It's a request for some sort of exchange, right? We have this natural reciprocity thing, but to expect it is where we cross the line. Right. The expectation creates the entitlement and all this other jazz. I give, you give, I give, you give. That creates a balance, and we feel that. If I expect, or say I expect, or you say, suddenly it becomes obligatory, and I'm not doing it because I want to, I'm doing it because you expect, maybe, and you start messing up the works. And we're all guilty of it. It's not, we're really messy as human beings. This is, I'm simplifying it as best I can, but this is not how, there's no ideal.
Well, there is an ideal, but it requires surrender, requires sacrifice, requires the openness and not the control. And that's why we keep talking. The control keeps coming up over and over again. And that's why I enjoy like the psilocybin or MDMA, is to go like, let go.
Yeah.
Let go and be. And you'll find your person is there. And this is where you said, well, if I don't get what I want, or if you don't do what I say, then I'll have a tantrum, or I'll get mad, or I'll be judgmental, or I'll, scream or yell or call you names or shame you or pull you down or kick your ass or whatever the thing is supposed to be. This is where you train your people to understand that it's not about these circumstances that define who someone is. They reveal them to themselves. Well, this
how
is
they're coping with loss.
But this is you. And this is where people don't want to have you to have the awareness, because I want to control the information so you don't see me. But if I just look at what you're doing, you're right there. And this does leave me with a consistent amount of choice. And I think that this is where people think commitment means I don't do inventory.
Oh, right.
Take it in effect. We're together, so you shouldn't be looking at what I'm doing anymore. You should just do whatever I say. And you're like, wait a second.
There's that word again.
We should always be checking our inventory. How are we doing? How are we doing? How is our love? How's our connection? How's our health? How's our wealth? How's our growth? How's our potential together? How's our listening? How are we doing? Like, are we having enough time together? Are we, connected in our way? Do we appreciate love languages at all? Do we even know what they are?
Right.
Here's a fun thing. I just did a video on this. I noticed our guys are really big on doing service love languages, gift giving, acts of service, even quality time will be very heavy. But when it comes to receiving, almost all of my guys were words of affirmation or touch, which means appreciate me and physically love me. And it doesn't always mean sex. It just means like, thank you, babe, or grab his muscles and go, ooh, you're so strong, or whatever, just something, or scratch his back, or
it's funny that you bring that up, because I was recently, and hopefully you won't put this on it. Don't put this on the thing. This is more of a private moment, but what was it she had said to me? I got into it with my girl about something like this, and it just fell out of my head because I was too worried about whether or not I was going to be vulnerable in this moment. What did you just say before? Bring me back.
All right. So I was actually really excited for what you were going to say. So
it's important. But yeah.
All right. So we're talking about, now I forgot what we were talking about, because I'm excited to hear what you have to say. And also, I think be vulnerable, man. Put it out there. Like,
I'm just trying to remember what it's not about afraid. I was just trying to get it right. Or remember it. And it's just, my brain's got I'm so excited to chat in these moments, especially chat with a like-minded person. It's going to be so refreshing. You know what I mean? It doesn't happen a lot for me because quite often when I bring this stuff up, people just start,
Being
you know,
defensive.
and or countering it or whatever. And my brain just goes, okay, you're not open to it. And so you end up not talking about it so much, which leads to making content. Anyway, she had said, we were just talking about energy dynamic of some kind of thing, and it was a should. Crap, it'll come back to me, hopefully. If it does, I'll put my hand up.
Do it. Sounds annoying. No, listen, that short-term memory, or also we operate so quickly that we're ready to do like the next 10 chess moves.
Yeah.
So we're already like, oh, I know what you're gonna do. I'm gonna do this. Oh, that sounds exciting. I love that you did that. Let's do this. Like
what drives me the most nuts is this concept of like, no, that's what it was. It's this belittling. You were saying love languages. That's what it is. Got it. And compliments. She finds me very attractive. Like she's vocalized that plenty of times, that I'm handsome, that I'm cute, that I'm, she likes my body and all this other stuff. But a lot of my trauma comes from objectification. A lot of people have tricked me by complimenting my vanity into controlling me because I was just simple enough to go, oh, thanks. And then I ended up being someone's pet or toy or butler or bodyguard or whatever. I was a tool being used and being a good looking tool, but still that. And I have explained that to her. So it's like, when you compliment me and tell me I'm handsome, I don't give a shit that you're enjoying that part. I know that sounds harsh to say. I'm not trying to belittle your experience. I'm not even telling you to stop it, but understand that when you tell me that, it doesn't actually do anything for me. Mm-hmm. So that doesn't count. That's not my love language. What I need to have respected through decades of gaslighting is my ability to perceive reality correctly. So I need to feel appreciated for my mind.
Of course.
But that for me personally as an individual sits higher than any form of physical compliment that could be lobbed my way. My mother, you're a good, handsome boy. Good boy, Christopher. Like I have been a good boy for my whole life. And I got fucking walked over my whole fucking life. So it's like,
which part of the country are you in, Chris?
I'm in Long Beach right now. I grew up in Hawaii, but I was born in Minnesota. Parents split when I was 4 in 1983, and mom moved to Maui, and dad stayed in Minneapolis.
In California, is that where you're at?
Now I'm in California. Yeah.
Yeah. And so culturally, like the vanity element is very, very strong that side.
Oh.
And so like this is where I'm a Northeasterner. So like it goes into what's your proficiency, not how beautiful are you. And so that's where I'm with you, where it's like you can tell me, man, you're really handsome or whatever. I'm like, yeah, thank you. I really don't have a lot of use for that. I'm with you. That's not really helpful for me, but to go, damn, you're fucking smart, dude. Or, geez, your perception is higher than anyone I've ever seen. Or how did you work through that so quickly? Damn, your processor is amazing. Like those things are.
My girlfriend said something like that to me. She would like, that's validation.
But that's proficiency, and this is where understanding, and this is words of affirmation still. It's just going to be in one certain categories. Because if I'm like, wow, you got real cool shoes, you're like, I guess thanks, but I'm not my shoes, so I don't know. That doesn't do much for me. But to say, damn, you are brilliant, man. I have met some brilliant people, but you are so exciting to talk to. And you go like, hell yeah, all right, well, he gets it. Like
sort of motivation too. Because I've had her say to me, like, if I make myself pretty, it doesn't get you excited. And it's like, because you're doing it for me and I never asked you to do it. I didn't say there was a flaw. You're improving something you think is flawed into an improved version of your perception. I never said you were wrong as you were. So dressing up with your nails and all this other stuff, I can acknowledge it looks great, but you really want me to treat you differently? That's to diminish who you are all the flipping time. What are you talking about?
Right.
So like, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I don't wear my clothes or cut my hair for other people's appreciation. I do it so I'm comfortable with myself.
Well, we don't have the same burdens, but you have burden of performance. And that's why you want to be measured based on your value for how much I can perform. They have burden of beauty because we measure far more physical than we do emotional, at least initially. And so like they have burden of beauty that's been pounded in them by other women since they were 11. So like that's not really a fair fight. Now they have both burden of performance and burden of beauty. I have a lot of empathy because women are falling apart because they're getting overwhelmed because they can't do it all. And
Right.
so there's that too. But I have a fun authenticity thing for you. And I did this survey with my women because they thought, well, when I dress to the nines, he gives me more attention than when I'm just wearing my PJs or dressed down or whatever. And so, like, what's that? He doesn't love me as much unless I dress up. I'm like, you ladies don't really understand how men work. You're missing the third option, which is the most authentic of all. Which version of your girl do you appreciate the most? When she gets all dressed up, when she's just wearing her slobby clothes, her like paint clothes or whatever clothes, or when she's wearing no clothes? Which one are you like, can I have that one right now, please?
Usually the no clothes. Yeah.
Now that's the most authentic version of her that there is.
Right.
There's no dress up, there's no pretending, there's no
Vulnerable.
hiding. It's the most authentic one. I'm like, you want your guy to appreciate you, lose the shirt. It's not get sparkles. It's not
Right.
get makeup. It's lose the shirt and be who you are. And
Like
guys, across the board, that was
flex.
the answer.
Yeah. Flex your vulnerable self fearlessly sounds sexy to every guy, as far as I know. Like, and I'm not saying that's an easy thing to do. I got to even like really acknowledge the mountain that must feel like from a female perspective. And I'm only speculating, you know what I mean? To be able to step into that. And you're right, from all the toxic propaganda bombardment over centuries, I don't really know the right answer to that. All I know for sure is that dressing and covering and concealing more isn't exposing the real you. It isn't showing me who you really are. It's showing me something you can be if you choose to be when you want to be, which is great. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's this weird sort of thing. Again, it's like you don't need to measure up better. It's a whole thing. I just realized it's time, and I got to wrap this up with you. I gotta get to work here. So I just caught onto that, but I'll cut that off there and let you take it.
You're good. People get it. We can be authentic through this, and I think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
No, I love talking to you, man. I really appreciate you. And I think next time we can go a little bit wilder. And so we'll
Yeah.
plan for that next time. But now it's good too, because we get to have this interaction because a lot of people will see our TikTok videos or they'll see a clip of something we'll create and think they get it. But it's good when you go, let me really talk with you. And then you go, man, now I get this guy.
Yeah.
Now I get this guy. This guy's not the bullshit that I saw in that 4-minute video. This guy talks this way.
It's hard too. It's very hard, isn't it? We always want to be able to, from the jump, project and like I can read people. And it's like I think that's where that humble pie has got to be served with it. Like when you think you're good at now, believe in yourself and your ability to read, but never delude yourself into thinking you can't be fooled. Because it's like it's that whole there's always whatever. So take your time and assess slowly and trust your instincts. Really trust your instincts. They might be wrong in the beginning, but if they're wrong, then you learn and you adjust. The only way to actually calibrate your instincts is to trust them and then fail and then get them better. Trust in other people's instincts is just not the way to go. It just isn't. You know what I mean? And be careful when you do. I'm not saying you should never, because I don't believe in shoulds or nevers.
Mm-hmm.
But still, it's an instinctual thing. And I feel the same way about you. It's like we're not the same person at all. We're very unique individual people who've gone through similar shared experiences because we're humans and we're guys. And there's a lot of things to talk about. Is one smarter than the other, better, worse, more, less? No, that we never get into that. And that's why we know that we're comfortable with each other, because this whole thing has felt a lot more like a dance. There's been some stumbly steps. I've been guilty, I know, but it's been more of a dance than any kind of like competitive tennis match.
Correct. And that's where I think people in the conversation, like you said, is a skill, is able to see how do you guys play the dance instead of competing to win.
Right.
Well done.
All right. Got that.
Oh. My dude. Chris, it's been an honor, man. I really appreciate the time that we've had together. So thank you so much for this. And I would like to do more in the future. And I really do. I want to have us do Next time we do an episode, I want to do a too hot for TV where only the Patreon subscribers can get it because we went too far out there. And I'd like to be able to do one of those episodes too.
I'm down. Absolutely.
Sounds awesome. All right, brother, go enjoy and dominate this day at work, and we'll be in touch. I'll talk to you later. Okay.
Take care, Rick. Thanks again, man.
You're welcome.
Click on the button and you can become the hero in your own story. It's time to start making the choices to change. And the evolution that you're going to do begins with choosing the next step. This is the way. And together, we're always stronger.